Hello, this is Prof. Friends with part two of an overview of networking, researching, making international calls. This piece is primarily focused on the module two of the International Research Proposal. This is an overview clip that you probably want to come back to when you begin to break ground on choosing your countries, etc. Because module two is a little bit different than module one. First, one nice feature of the GMS 4 that we are using, I just started using this year, is that it does have some automated data sources. So when you input your countries, it will pull fairly general macro level statistics from the World Bank. It takes a little while. It's kind of like baking for the population. We're choosing 6 countries. Again, general GDP, economic data, maybe trade data, pieces like that may be fairly easy. But in the other category, which many of you are delivering things through supply chain, you're going to need to go find out what's called the infrastructure index. As I've used the pet food thing, you may have to look at some demographic factors that are macro, but more specific to what the pet industry has to look at when they're looking at a potential market to go into that's going to offer them growth and opportunity for some time. So, uh, Module 2 has a lot of data sources for research also in this book. And start going to your US .gov trade or .gov sites with the US government that they supply. They're often on the embassies, very useful, very general. If you're looking for a macro level number, the sooner you can get an industry report from a relative embassy, the better. The better that it will be. So I'll talk about calling here in just a moment. But uh, again, macro is weighting out specific criteria, general criteria, broader criteria, indicators that you will weight and give preference to. Mainly, you'll weight probably the ones that are more relative or most important, whether it be disposable income, things like that, PPP, purchasing power parity. You're going to weight those out. So again, I think getting the macro pieces of part one, mod two, is the easiest part of the project. The most challenging part of the whole project becomes with part two of module two, is when we're getting the micro data. And this is when, one, you can get research through scholarly journals. Believe it or not, people like myself have pursued PhDs in business, and we write on the most novel topics of business relative to us. We've had papers on pets, we've had papers on gambling. It's not that hard to find. A person has to do their PhD on some type of business related research. So there is a wealth of knowledge that you can often pick up. It might be in the area, it might be for your country, but you can find ones that are useful. And so those are library resources, as well as the other pieces we mentioned earlier, Euromonitor, uh, those types of sources. But the best is going to come from primary uh, research. Getting a hold of the embassy, getting a hold of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. They are throughout the world. When you start looking at competition, you can actually speak with competition. We've had a lot of students interview managers of stores of the same industry in that country. That's unbelievably powerful primary information as to whether there's going to be growth or opportunity or it's a good time to move in. As for calling, I mentioned the process earlier. Um, I would say 90% of the embassies work with us. Some like to have email more than phone calls, but we find the phone call to be most effective. For some reason in business, all of us have an unwritten code of returning our calls at some point. Um, and you try to get a name. So we don't try to go to the top. We're not calling you ambassador. We're not going to Lowe's. We're really trying to get a staff research person, usually in the Department of Commerce or in the Department of Agriculture. Okay. Again, there's the Chamber of Commerce, and there is competition also. And then there's your own networking. Reach out to international students, international contacts, people in business. The world gets small real fast when you start looking around. But again, the hard part is getting those possibly 3 to 5, really unique pieces of data. Again, using the pet example, how many pets per capita? What's the most popular pet? Um, what do people spend on their pets? Disposable income spent on pets. How many pet stores are there already? Where are they in their economic cycle? Are they having less children or more pets currently? What are the regulations on pet? What are the regulations on pet food? In the country. These are the micro details that really separate what I would say are average, mediocre type proposals to excellent proposals. Um, and there's nothing better than have two countries that you've got the same data lining up, and you have statistical backing, and then you have qualitative backing from your sources as to their advice. It's been a lot of fun. I'm going to use the example of the cherry business, for example. We had a group of students, half of them from farms, large farms in Washington State. They chose to do the cherry business, and they did a lot of research. And they actually ended up choosing the fourth rated country on their macro list. The reason being is that their primary contacts, which they realized how small the world got, they talked to people in Europe, they talked to people in Asia that all knew who their farm was, which they were amazed. They did not know that, how small the world can get so quick. But, the advice was, one of them was Vietnam. The economic indicators weren't that great because Vietnam's not an incredibly powerhouse. But guess what? One of the most prestigious gifts that anyone can give to somebody in Vietnam are fresh, sweet cherries. I won't go into the details on how they're packaged. I learned more about cherries than I could possibly imagine, but they just nailed it. They hit it out of the park. The whole class was just in awe of their work. So again, start broad with your macro, your typical library research, your references in here, and then dig down. And you've got to start early. This is not something, like you're so used to searching and trying to pull stuff up. You can get lucky because I do searching on your stuff before I review it. If I get a group that says they can't, I take it as a personal challenge. I go to Google Scholar, items like that. And you got to be tenacious and you've got to do it in advance. As I said, each team averages 13 to 16 hours. Each person puts 3 to 4 hours in this project a week. You've got to chisel away, chisel away, chisel away, and get leads and contacts. Don't expect embassies to get back with you overnight. People to call you back. It takes time. They may not be the right person. They need to find another person. There may be a holiday. They may be on holiday. But more than likely, if you stay at it and manage your time well proactively in advance, you are going to get some great contacts. That's part 2 of research, networking, calling. And again, if you have really deep, big challenge, please escalate to your TA and escalate to me. Thanks.